Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome you. My name is Charlotte, and I'm going to be doing a show for you today called Yahweh's Food Laws or Health Laws. And Yahweh created us, and when he created us, he gave us instructions for living and taking care of ourselves. Just like if you go to the store and you buy a lawnmower, let's say, the lawnmower manufacturer also provides with you instructions for how to use and care for your lawnmower. And in those instructions, it'll tell you that if you want the lawnmower to run, you've got to put some oil in it. And it'll tell you what kind of oil. And if you decide not to use that kind of oil because you don't have any or you think it's too expensive, and instead you decide that you'd prefer to use canola oil instead of what they say to use, you can go ahead and do that. You can put the canola oil in there, and then you notice that it needs to take gas also. Well, you can decide, well, I know it says that I'm supposed to put gas in here, and it tells you the grade and everything, but you can decide, no, that's too expensive too. I've got a lot of yard to mow. I think since water's cheaper and I've got plenty on hand, I'll just throw some water in there and call that good. It should just be fine. And then what happens when you start the lawnmower? You might have ruined the lawnmower. The lawnmower is probably plagued with problems now. And to get the lawnmower back to running correctly, you've got a mess. And here you just paid $300 on this lawnmower and you've just ruined it. So you would take care of that lawnmower if you just spent $300 on it. You would make sure it had the proper oil and the proper gas. You wouldn't even think of putting canola oil and watering in it and expecting it to run when the instruction manual says that's not how it runs. Well, just the way the manufacturer of the lawnmower provides instructions, so did Yahweh. Yahweh made us. He gave us the instructions on how we are supposed to eat. And we are supposed to eat things that are considered food. He tells us what is food and what we should put in our body. And a summary of the food in the Bible that Yahweh tells us to eat is as follows. Organic produce, that's herbs, spices, vegetables, fruit, legumes, and grains. Then organic clean meat, that would be ox, otherwise known as a steer to us today, sheep, goat, deer, fish with fins and scale, and poultry, most birds. I will go over that. Organic raw dairy, which is cheese, curds, butter, eggs, and milk from clean animals. Also instructs us to eat honey, raw honey, and sea salt. Okay, now we're going to go into what specifically does it tell us about the organic produce, so we know what we're talking about, or I'm calling it organic, but our Bible calls it specifically more fruits and vegetables that have seeds, and they produce kind after kind. Genesis 1:29 tells us, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, every tree with seeds in its fruit. You shall have them for food." And then in Genesis 1:11 he said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seeds, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seeds according to their own kind, trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And Yahweh said it was good. Well, the Elohim said it was good, actually. Therefore, Yahweh would not consider us eating genetically modified or hybrid seeds because they do not produce kind after kind. Or organic seeds or heirloom seeds, you could also call them that too. They produce new life. When the plant grows, if you let the vegetation, the fruit or vegetable get all the way ripe, you can take those seeds and you can plant new life with them. Organic, heirloom, they all produce new life, which genetically modified foods and hybrid, you get the seeds out of those, and or the hybrid seeds out of a hybrid plant, and they do not produce new life the way you would expect them to. I've tried it before. They don't look as they should when you try to replant them. So they are really not living food. They're actually dead food. So Yahweh would not think that we should eat things like seedless tomatoes. Seedless tomatoes, they have no life because they cannot give new life because they do not have any seeds. The same with seedless watermelons. They don't have seeds, so that they cannot produce new life. Therefore, they're, again, considered dead food. Some people question as to whether you can eat mushrooms or not, since mushrooms are not grown from seeds. Actually, mushrooms are grown from spores. Their spores are considered their seed, and the Bible doesn't mention them at all, so you can decide for yourself whether you should eat them or not. I've heard other people tell me because they grow off of things dead, but I've seen them growing in the grass, and I've seen them growing in a variety of places, and they will grow in compost. So compost is another material that some people might consider dead, and they put them in their garden, and that's fine. So I don't see that as a reason why you can't eat mushrooms either. I personally don't eat mushrooms. I've never cared for them my whole life, but I personally don't consider them unclean even, and I don't care one way or another because I do not eat them. The other law regarding produce is that we also need to follow crop rotation laws, and letting the land rest is very important, and ensures the soil stays rich in nutrients. And I'll tell you, after when I was growing a garden for 4 years at a farm that I lived in after 4 years, my whole basement was full of canned food and everything. I'm sure if I would have went 2 more years, I wouldn't have needed to grow anything. I could take that summer off to take care of other things. So eat organic produce, which includes vegetables, herbs, spices, fruit, legumes, and grains. Now, the other thing that Yahweh instructed us that we can eat is organic, clean meat. Yahweh provided a list of meat that we are to eat for nourishment. Deuteronomy 14:4 says, these are the beasts you shall eat. One is the ox, which is we commonly refer to as a steer in the United States. The sheep, the goat, the hart, which is a deer, roebuck is a deer, fallow deer, wild goat, and a mountain goat, and a wild ox is an antelope, and other mountain goats. Every beast that part the hoof, and cleave the cleft unto the claws, and chew the cud amongst the beasts ye shall eat. And then Deuteronomy 14:9 tells us that we can eat all of that are in the waters that have fins and scales, ye shall eat. Deuteronomy 14:11 tells us that all the clean birds ye shall eat, and I'll go over the unclean birds in a minute. Leviticus 11:22 says that you may eat the locust of any kind, the bald locust of any kind, the cricket of any kind, the grasshopper of any kind, but all the winged insects that have 4 feet are detestable for you. Yahweh also not only gave us instructions on what we are to eat to take care of us, but he also provided instructions on how animals are to eat. It says that in Genesis 1:30, he gave, it says, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of heavens, and to everything that creepeth on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for them, and it was so. Now, in this verse, cows are considered, for example, a beast of the earth that you would eat. And they only eat grass and so forth. They do not eat feed. It's not expected that they should eat some feed from a corporation. Back when the Bible was written, there was no corporations to give them feed to feed them out. They just ate grass and some things like clover, and that was fine. That's all they needed. The feed is only that they feed them is only to fatten up, to get it close to market faster. And a lot of the feed that they're feeding it with contains genetically modified soybean, corn, and soybean. In Leviticus chapter 9, it says that only clean animals were acceptable for sacrifice. They could sacrifice cows, sheep, ox, and goat. Today we no longer sacrifice to Yahweh, since Yeshua was the last sacrifice. But it did give us instructions here regarding the sacrifices, that we're never to eat any fat or blood of any animal. In Genesis 9:4 it says, but you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Leviticus 3:16 says, and the priest shall burn them on the altar as food, offering with a pleasant aroma. All fat is of the Lord. It shall be a statute throughout your generations and all your dwellings, that you neither eat fat nor blood. Leviticus 7:23 tells us, you shall not eat fat of ox, sheep, or goat. The fat of an animal that dies of itself, or the fat of one that is torn by beasts, may be put to any other use, but on no account shall you eat it. Leviticus 17:10 tells us, if one of the house of Israel, or a stranger who sojourns among them, eats any blood, I will set my face against the person who eats blood, and will cut them off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you on the altar to make an atonement for your souls. Deuteronomy 12:23 again says, only be sure that you do not eat the blood, for the blood is the life, and you shall not eat the life with the flesh. You shall not eat it. You shall pour it on the earth like water. So basically, when the meat is processed, the processing, if you bring a cow in to be processed, which I have done that before, you bring the cow in to be processed, and it can't, as Deuteronomy 14:21 tells you, you shall not eat anything that dies of itself. The cow, according to the state laws, USDA laws, the cow has to be able to walk in. It has to be healthy. They kill it with the intentions of you eat it, and that's what is supposed to be done. And then after they kill it, they hang it for several days, and they drain the blood. So that we are not eating the blood. And I wanted to mention that because a lot of people think that when you see that red stuff coming out of the meat, when you're barbecuing it or frying the meat, and the red stuff comes up to the top. That is not blood. The blood has been drained out of the cow. So you don't have to cook the meat to death to make sure you're not eating blood. That is just the juice from the meat. The blood is drained out by whoever processes the meat. And therefore, if and also if an animal dies out in the field, that cannot be considered an animal that you eat. Because Yahweh tells us that anything died naturally, we cannot eat it. And unfortunately, that would be a loss. If you had a herd of cows, that would be a loss. In the New Testament adds that our meat should not be sacrificed to idols or strangled. Acts 15:29 says that you abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what has been strangled, and from sexual immorality. You must yourself from these, you will do well. Farewell. Okay, so we can't have any meat that's sacrificed to idols with blood or strangled. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us that we need to use the kosher process called sheep to slaughter cattle. This process is very, very cruel. Instead of killing the animal first, what they do is they slit its throat and let the blood drain from the animal while it's still living. We are to kill it humanely and then hang it and let the blood cure out. So basically, when it comes to meat, you eat grass-fed ox, deer, sheep, and goats, and do not eat their fat or blood. That's our takeaway on that. Now, some people like to say that claim, the churches today like to claim that the law has been done away with, and that we can eat pork because it's done away with. But the problem is that reverts us back to the law that was in place prior to Moses documenting the law, if that's the accepted philosophy. However, that doesn't pan out either, because we really are supposed to follow all the laws. We're just not supposed to do blood sacrifices anymore. And the proof of this is that Abel was a keeper of sheep, and he brought the first of his flock to be sacrificed, and that was acceptable to Yahweh. Cain's sacrifice of fruit was not acceptable, since Yahweh never accepted fruit as a sacrifice. And that's in Genesis 4:2-4, if you want the whole story. Yahweh didn't accept it because the sacrifice laws never said that you could sacrifice fruit. In the sacrifice laws, only the best of the clean animals could be sacrificed, as stated in Leviticus 3:6. And if you had 2 sheep in your herd, and you didn't eat sheep because you weren't told to eat sheep yet, and you sacrificed them to Yahweh, it wouldn't have been a big deal. It wouldn't have been a sacrifice, because what were you going to do with them otherwise? But if it's something you eat and it is your family food for the year, these 2 sheep, and you have to give up one to Yahweh, that would be a sacrifice, because you could only eat one for the year. So they knew what an acceptable sacrifice to Yahweh was. The other reason why we know that the laws were in effect before Moses documenting them for us is that Noah was instructed to bring clean and unclean animals, since he was given specific instructions for including them on the ark. Genesis 7:1 says, "When the Lord said to Noah, 'Go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate. The 7 pairs of birds of the heaven also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of the earth. So, they were going to be on the ark for a year. They had to prepare and have the ark ready for living all year. And so he was to bring 7 of the clean, because 7 of the clean would be what they'd be eating from for the year while they were on the ark. The unclean animals, let's say the hog. The hog, I'm sure, was on there because he was going to keep the ark clean. That's his job, keep the ark clean from maybe the animal residue and everything else. That could have been his purpose on there, but the unclean certainly wasn't to eat. And that's before Moses documenting the laws, that he got the instructions for clean and unclean. So we Noah knew the food laws. Okay, now let's talk about the unclean animals that we're not allowed to eat. Yahweh provided us a list of unclean animals. These animals were not intended as food. Most of them were intended to keep the earth clean. The animals that are on land that are not considered clean are Deuteronomy 14:7. Nevertheless, these ye shall not eat of them that chew the cud, or them that divideth the cloven hoof, as the camel, and the hare or rabbit, and the coney, for they chew the cud, but divideth not the hoof. Therefore they are unclean to you. The swine, pig, because it divideth the hoof, yet cheweth not the cud, it is unclean to you. Ye shall not eat their flesh, nor touch their dead carcass. Hare and swine will eat anything. They keep the land clean. That's their job. And I'm sure the reason why we are not supposed to touch their dead carcass or anything is because things do seep in through our skin. If you've ever quit smoking using a nicotine patch, even if you pull that patch off, that nicotine is still working your body. Also, some women have hormone patches. You take the hormone patch, that's still going through your body. You can't just wash it off. And that's the same thing with touching one of these dead, dirty animals. It could seep in through your skin and consider you unclean for that while. The animals in the water that you should not eat include catfish, since they have no scales. Catfish are bottom dwellers that keep the lakes clean. Shellfish, including shrimp, lobster, and crab, should also not be eaten because they don't have any fins or scales. Deuteronomy 14:10 tells us if it doesn't have scales or fins, you can't eat them. And the reason why you can't eat those, because they don't have, is because especially if they don't, the scales and the fins make it so that the water circulates through the fish and keeps their body clean. If they don't have those scales, that makes them hold in the toxins. The same with the shellfish. They're holding all those toxins in within the shell, and they don't have a way to allow it to escape from their body. And that's the same thing with pigs too. The pigs don't have any way to sweat, so they hold all those toxins in. And since all of these are cleaning the water and the land, they would be holding all kinds of toxic stuff in them. The birds that we are not to eat are basically the birds of prey. Deuteronomy 14:12 tells us we're not to eat the eagle, the osprey, the the glede, the kite, the owls, the swan, pelican, eagle, stork, heron, lapwing, and the bat. These birds, again, are ones that, if a animal is killed in the road, they'll be one of those to sweep in and start eating that dead animal, and we're not supposed to eat that animal, probably, and nor are we supposed to eat something that died on its own doings, and they're eating it, so we shouldn't eat them. Most insects are not considered food either. Leviticus 11:12 tells us all winged insects that go on all fours are detestable for you. Yet among the winged insects that go on all fours, you may eat those that have joint legs above their feet, which hop on the ground. Of them you may eat the locust of any kind, the bald locust of any kind, the cricket of any kind, the grasshopper of any kind, but all other winged insects that have 4 feet are detestable to you. Animals that swarm should not be considered food either. Leviticus 11:29 says, "These are unclean to you among the swarming things that swarm on the ground: the mole rat, the mouse, the great lizard of any kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the sand lizard, the chameleon. These are unclean to you, all these that swarms." So basically, we're just not supposed to eat the animals that Yahweh provided to us to clean the land and the waters. That's not food. Most Christians like to argue in a roundabout way that the New Testament says that it's okay to eat pork. However, they do not use the same logic to conclude that they can now eat mouse and rats. Why not? Some state it's because they did not eat meat prior to laws of Moses. However, that is not true, as I mentioned before. The church states that tithing must be paid because that was in effect prior to the laws of Moses. The laws against eating pork and paying tithing are both in the same chapter of Deuteronomy chapter 4. Both laws were in effect before Moses and are still in effect now. As we know that Abraham tied to Melchizedek, that's how we know that the tithing law was in effect. And we know that the law was in effect prior because we know Noah was even instructed to bring clean and unclean animals on the ark. Now, the Israelites were very much adamant about following these laws back then. In fact, in Maccabees chapter 7, there's an account where 7 brothers and their mother was killed for not eating swine. These Judahites chose death since it was more important to follow Yahweh's law and not defile their bodies. Here's how the account of this starts. 2 Maccabees 7:1. It came to pass also that 7 brethren with their mothers were taken and compelled by the king against the law to taste swine's flesh, and they were tormented with scourges and whips. Well, after they were tormented for not eating the flesh with scourges and whips, they still would not eat the pork because they did not want to defile their bodies. So this was an important law to them. They ended up dying over that. Isaiah tells us about Yahweh's rebellious people. There'll be rebellious people, I think this was referring to the end days in Isaiah 65:4, who eat pig's flesh and broth of tainted meats in their vessels. You'll read more about that story if you like. And in Isaiah, it talks about the final judgments in Yeshua's second coming. It says, Isaiah 66:17, those who sanctify and purify themselves to go into the gardens, falling in the mist, eating pig's flesh and abomination and mice, shall come to an end together, declares the Lord. So in the end, some people are going to come to an end of their life eating this detestable thing. Let's face it, the corporations make money. The corporations make money from selling us pig. And telling us it's the other white meat. I mean, what a joke. They make better profits on making pigs, selling pigs. They're grown in a huge confined warehouse type situation. I've known a lady out here that took care of them. They stayed inside. She went and monitored them every so often, gave them their vaccines, gave them dewormers. They had to be on a dewormer schedule. and they most of the part didn't see the light of day. And that was considered healthy food? I don't think so. The dangers of eating pork are listed on many different sites. I won't go on them, but one of them is not only getting worms and parasites, but it also is trichinosis and other dangerous things. In fact, they harbor mercury and other things in their skin because they cannot release the toxins. And anytime you eat pork, you're bringing those toxins into your body because they don't sweat. They have no way to relieve it themselves. So, Yahweh definitely, just like we're not supposed to put water in the lawnmower, we're not supposed to put these unclean food in our body, and it's not good for the earth either. We're not being good stewards of the earth if we're not letting them do their job and we're eating them. Unclean food. More about unclean food. A lot of prepared boxed food and produce at the store should be avoided. Since they are unclean too, Yahweh would consider them unclean. Toxic pesticides are being sprayed on our produce, which makes them unclean to eat. There's a list of fruits and vegetables that have known in the store because they've been tested to have heavy pesticide labels. And so when you see these, you really should be looking for organic if you don't want to eat pesticides. That is apples, peaches, nectarines, strawberries, grapes, celery, spinach, sweet bell peppers, cucumbers, cherry tomatoes, snap peas, potatoes, hot peppers, kale, and collard greens. If you want to avoid pesticides, these should really be organic because Yahweh doesn't want us putting pesticides or Roundup in our body. We wouldn't drink a teaspoon of Roundup. We definitely don't need to have it on our food. And just genetically modified food should be considered unclean and not eaten. Some of the most common GMO foods is rapeseed, honey, that's mostly the Canadian sources are GMO, cotton, rice, soybeans, tomatoes, corn, canola, potatoes, papayas, zucchini, yellow crooked squash, chicory, cottonseed oil, peas, sugar beets, and many vitamins have GMO sources in them. In America, there are no laws that require GMO foods to be labeled. Until just this last month, they made a law, but I won't get into it, but it's called the Dark Act, and it really doesn't do much help to inform the consumer. In the European Union, Japan, Malaysia, and Australia, there are laws requiring GMO food be labeled. Hybrids should not be considered clean since their seeds will not grow and produce new plants. Hybrids do not produce kind after kind. Okay, many of the boxed and canned foods should be considered unclean in our stores since they contain harmful food additives that would be considered unclean. Here is a partial list to avoid. Aspartame, definitely, that's number 1 on the list. It's in NutraSweet and Equal. Made by Monsanto, the same company that brings you Agent Orange and Roundup Weed Killer. High fructose corn syrup, that's a GMO product, very bad for you. Montezunum glutamate, very, very bad. Trans fat, artificial food dyes, sodium sulfate, sodium nitrate, potassium bromate, Olean, a product called Olean. It's allowed here in America, but it's banned in the United Kingdom and Canada. Bromilated vegetable oil, that is allowed here in America, but it is banned in over 100 countries. Potassium bromate, or bromilated flour. It's allowed here in the United States, but is banned in Europe, Canada, and China. A product that bleaches flour. It's allowed here in America again, banned in Australia, the UK, and most European countries. Synthetic growth hormones, that's what's given to the cows. It's called RBGH and RBST. That is banned in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Japan, and the European Union. but it is allowed here in the United States. Arsenic is found in put in poultry for some reason. That's banned in the European Union. So what I'm telling you here is if you live in the United States, you really need to learn what every one of those additives are in there and find out whether they're food or not. I know they were having a sale on canned tomatoes a few years ago, but there was this one product I didn't know. I didn't know if I should buy it because I didn't know what that additive was. I went home, looked it up on the internet, and I found out that product I can't remember what it was. It was just another way of saying salt. And that's all it basically was salt. And why they called it this name, I don't know. So I went back to the store and I bought it. But if I would have found out it was some chemical preservative or something chemically made, basically that's what we're talking about here. Things that chemicals done to our food or put in our food. Yahweh doesn't want us to eat that. That's not considered food. Okay, another thing to be aware of in case you're not aware of, some companies are using aborted fetal cells to develop artificial flavors. Yahweh definitely does not approve of this practice. A food label that states it has artificial flavors, it may really need to state it contains embryonic kidney cells from an aborted human baby. Yes. So, if you see a product that says it has artificial flavors, you should not eat it because that is definitely against Yahweh's food laws. Okay, now Yahweh did give us curses that were documented for eating unclean food. Here are the curses. And many of us are receiving the curses because we are eating GMO food, pork, toxic pesticides that are sprayed on our produce. Here they are. Deuteronomy 28:21. The Lord will make the pestilence stick to you until he has consumed you off the land that you are entering to take possession of it. The Lord will strike you with wasting disease and fever, inflammation, and fiery heat, with drought and with blight and with mildew. They shall pursue you until you perish. That doesn't sound good to me. Deuteronomy 28:58. If you are not careful to do all the words of his law that are written in this book, that you may fear his glorious and awesome natures, the Lord your God, then the Lord will bring on you and your offspring extraordinary afflictions severe and lasting, and sicknesses grievous and lasting. And he will bring upon you again all the diseases of Egypt, of which you were afraid, and they shall cling to you. Every sickness also and every affliction that is not recorded in the book of the law, Yahweh will bring to you until you are destroyed. Whereas you were numerous as the stars of heaven, you should be left few and numerous because you did not obey the voice of Yahweh your God. We are plagued with high blood pressure, cancer, diabetes, and many other plagues from eating things not authorized by Yahweh today. From eating them. The doctors are making us patients for life, selling us chemicals and unclean substances to put in our body to control these plagues. And I say control these plagues. They are not curing them because they don't have any plans to cure you. They just plan to control them and make it so that you think you're doing better, so you can just continue in your own sinful nature of eating these foods. Also, the consequences of not following these laws are reflected in the Song of Moses. Deuteronomy 32:23. And I will heap disaster upon them. I will send my arrows upon them. They shall be wasted with hunger and devoured by plague and poisonous pestilence. And we are. We are. Poisonous pestilence. We've got Roundup on more of our food than people realize. The book of Revelation reflects in the end times there will be famine and pestilence. The famine is not from having real food, is from having no real food to eat. And what I say by real food, if it's not what Yahweh told us that I started the show with, it's not real food, and it's not nourishing our body, and it should not be considered food. Revelation 6:8, and look, and behold, a pale horse. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over the fourth the earth, to kill with sword and famine, and with pestilence, and by a wild beast of the earth. People that are overweight today, I mean, just really overweight, you look at them and you think that they're overweight because they're eating too much. No, they probably have a problem with that needs to be addressed, and their body is probably starving for good food and vegetables and clean meats, just starved for them, but they're not getting that. They're eating trash like cookies and stuff, filling them with that, so they're still hungry after they eat that. They eat more, and the reason why is because they're not getting the nutrition the body wants, so they keep eating more. They need to clean themselves out with satisfy the hunger that your body has for real nutrition. Okay, the Bible mentions some foods in the Bible many times, and so it must be due to their importance. Just again, let me get water. When Yahweh provided the Israelites with a promised land after the Exodus of Egypt, the land was described as having certain foods. All of these foods are healthy, and he states that they will make you full. Deuteronomy, instead of junk food that makes you hungry for more real food. Deuteronomy 8:7, for the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and springs flowing out of the valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey, a land which you will eat bread without scarcity, in which you will lack nothing, a land whose stones are iron, and out of the hills you can dig copper, and you shall eat and be full. And you shall bless Yahweh your God for the good land that he has given you. Many times in our Bibles it refers to it as the land of milk and honey. Deuteronomy 26:9, for example, and he brought us into the place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And then the king of Assyria promised the descendants of Judah a new land with healthier food and water if they went with him. 2 Kings 18:31 tells us, do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Syria, make your peace with me and come out. Then each one of you will eat of his own vine, and each one of his own fig tree, and each one of you will drink the water of his own cistern, until I come and take away to a land of your own, a land of grain and wine, and a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey, that you may live and not die. And you may live because you're going to have good food. The book of Syriac lists certain foods and elements as necessary for human life. And it is true to note in this verse that the sinners will turn these important items into evil, and that is what the corporations are doing today. Syriac 39:26 says, basic to all necessity of life are water, fire, iron, salt, fine flour, milk, honey, wine, oil, and clothing. For these things are godly, and all these things are good, but for sinners they will turn to evil. The Bible verses above all seem to agree that water, wheat, or flour, honey, vines, or wine, olive trees or oils, and milk are very important. The book of Revelations prophesies that we'll stop buying certain foods from merchants. I'm confident as more people learn about the current day's issues with the corporate food, they will either buy organic or produce their own or go to the farmer's market. Revelations 18:11 tells us, "And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her, since no one buy their cargo anymore, cargo of gold, silver, jewels, pearl, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, all kinds of scented wood, all kinds of articles of ivory, all kinds of articles of costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, and sheep, horses, and chariots, and slaves," that is, human souls. So there's a variety of things in this list, but some of them is their food. And if you dig more into what they are doing to the flour and stuff, you wouldn't eat the flour in the store, any of the bread in the store. And I just really think that this is going to be coming real soon. As more and more people are finding out that probably the worst place you should get your food ever is at the grocery store. The Bible also tells us all kinds of food that they mention all kinds of food they were eating. And all of these food, if you research them, you find out that they're all extremely good for you. For example, almonds are mentioned in Genesis 43:11 and Numbers 17:8. And the benefits to eating them are as they relieve constipation, they help respiratory disorders, coughs, heart disorders, anemia, and impotency, and diabetes. Wonderful! What a wonderful food to be put in your pot. What about apples? Of course, don't buy Arctic apples or heavy pesticide apples. But apples are mentioned in Joel 1:12 and Song of Solomon 2:5. And they're good for bone protection. They help asthma, Alzheimer's, and cancer protection, and diabetes management. And then there's barley. Barley is mentioned in Deuteronomy 8, 2 Samuel 17:28, Isaiah 4:9, Revelation 6:6. And barley is good. It helps for asthma, arthritis, impotency, skin problems, anemia, obesity, constipation, diabetes, hepatitis, kidney problems, and heart disease. The benefits of barley are numerous. And I do like to make my unleavened bread with barley. It tastes really good for Passover. Beans are mentioned in 2 Samuel 7:28 and also in Ezekiel 4:9. And they help prevent diabetes and some cancers. Bread is mentioned so many times in the Bible. It is the most mentioned food. And I'm not going to mention all the places it's mentioned because it's just continually mentioned. It's mentioned for Pentecost that we have to have 2 full loaves at Pentecost, and then in Feast of Unleavened Bread, we're supposed to have the unleavened bread. Jesus says it's the bread of life. It was extremely important to them. That was their staple. Now, I do understand not buying it from the store. I searched many times for a clean bread to eat in the grocery store, even in the bakery department, and I could not find a bread that should be considered food. Now, if you look in the frozen section, in the health food section, they will have Ezekiel and some other breads, but they are expensive. It's better to make your own from organic flour if you're going to do that. Coriander seeds mentioned in Exodus 16:31 and Numbers 11:7. And it treats skin inflammation, high cholesterol, diarrhea, anemia, menstrual issues, and eye care. Cucumbers, Jeremiah 10:5 and Numbers 11:5. are mentioned. Skin and hair care, fights cancer, bad breath, weight loss, diabetes, reduces cholesterol, gout, and arthritis. That sounds good for you. Now, dairy, the organic milk, curds, cheese, butter, all from clean animals, of course, cows, sheep, and goats. This is another one. It's mentioned throughout the Bible many times. The most important mention of that is in Isaiah 7:15, and it prophesies about Jesus being born, and it says that he will eat curds and honey. Just like they were going to be brought to the land of honey, now Jesus is coming, and he's being prophesied that he will eat curds and honey. So I would say curds and honey are pretty important food to have in your diet. And I see curds, I eat it every day. I make kefir, and won't be going into how to do that today, but I do ferment my raw cow milk to make kefir, and it provides you with numerous probiotics in your system that help you from getting sick. And it seems like every time that I go out of town and I don't have kefir for a few days, my immunity, because it's not real good, it goes down and I get sick every time. So I think it's pretty important food, and it makes for healthy bones, dental health, thyroid, and heart. It's good for those things. The most important thing to know about this is the organic milk in the grocery store. I've looked at every one of them because I make kefir, and I have to have milk or it'll kill my kefir grains. All the organic milk is been pasteurized. That means it is completely dead milk. I cannot use it to make kefir because it does not have any live enzymes in it. So it's basically dead milk. It is not good for anything, and it's a waste of money for you to buy in the store. It actually, in this case, it is better just buy the regular milk, because it does have the good enzymes from you, and it will create kefir. But you do have to make sure that it does not have the growth hormones that I was talking about. What is it, the RBST, or whatever it is? You do need to make sure of that, and you really should buy raw if you can, because even at that, they've talked about putting aspartame in milk and not labeling it. I don't know if they ever went forward with that, but who knows what they're putting in milk. Plus, there's nowhere in the Bible that gives the instructions that before we drink our milk, it is supposed to be boiled to 200 degrees or whatever they do to it, and then homogenize it so that the cream is evenly distributed. Both of those processes, they're destroying the milk is all they're doing. The other thing about the dairy products to be careful about is that a lot of the cheese is made from GMO rennet. That's the hardening agent to put in it. The rennet's supposed to be from an animal source, a clean animal source, and a lot of the rennet is chemically made instead of coming from a natural source, clean animal. Okay, now let's see. Garlic. Garlic is mentioned in Numbers 11:5. It's a wonderful food. It's anti-cancer, anti-infection, detoxifying. It's good for asthma, bone health, heart disease, and migraines. Grapes are mentioned in several places. They're mentioned in Leviticus 26:5, Deuteronomy 28:39, Revelations 14:18, 14:19 also. And they're good for constipation, indigestion, fatigue, kidney disorders, macular degeneration, cataracts, and breast cancer and Alzheimer's. And it's just good for that. When I say these things are good for it, it aids in it. I'm not saying you're going to cure yourself for sure. If you've already let yourself go bad because you haven't been eating right all these years, these food might not necessarily, you're basically plagued and you've got to heal from it. One of the way you'd heal from these things is by eating these things, but that would take some time probably. But anyways, with grapes, you do need to buy organic. That's another one, because they have heavy pesticide residue, and you need to stay away from the seedless grapes. Most store in the grocery store are mostly seedless. They do not produce new life, and they're not considered food. Honey, like it prophesies, Yeshua will eat honey. In Isaiah 7:15. You wouldn't want the processed or the faked honey, because it's killed all the important enzymes that your body needs. You need it. Organic raw honey helps your immune system, healing, swelling and infection, skin care, antibacterial, antiviral, prevents cancer and heart diseases, reduces cough and throat irritations. I love honey when I'm having a rough throat and get a cough. Especially in the morning when I've been having a hard time, I have that in my coffee, and it just really helps. You just got to be aware that if you're getting cheap honey from the grocery store, a lot of it's fake. There's a lot of GMO honey on the market. Processed honey at the grocery store will not provide the same benefits as the raw organic honey. The heat used to process it destroys it. Onions, listed in Numbers 11:5. It improves immunity, regulates blood sugar, reduces inflammation, heals infection, promotes good cholesterol, cancer preventing. It's a bee sting remedy, reduces chance of ulcers. This is one that's, you're okay to not buy organic, because most likely it's unlikely to hold on to pesticide residue or anything like that. That's my understanding. Salt. That's an important one. It's mentioned quite a bit in the Bible. It's mentioned in Exodus 34, Leviticus 2:13, Numbers 34:3, 2 Kings 2:20, Ezra 6:9, Ezekiel 43:24, Matthew 5:13, Mark 9:50, Sirach 39:26, where it says that salt is necessity of human life. Salt is vital to your brain, blood sugar, intestinal tract, clearing mucus, phlegm, asthma, congestion of sinuses, muscle cramps, and many other benefits. Sea salt contains 80 minerals your body needs. Now, this is something important to know. Unfortunately, most of our people do not understand this. The salt, the table salt, that's right, you should not eat it. That iodized table salt is absolutely not good for you. I am not talking about that. I am talking about like the Celtic sea salt that you can buy. It's gray, and all the minerals have not been washed off of it. It has about 80 minerals in it. It's like taking a mineral substance. You can take a quarter teaspoon in your water of a day and make sure you get the minerals. Your body, if you have not been eating this salt, your body is probably craving all of those minerals, and you need them. And if you don't get Celtic sea salt, there's a brand that the brand name is called Real Salt, and it also has about 80 minerals in it that your body needs. That is the salt the Bible is talking about. That is the salt your body needs. And in fact, they used to ferment their food with salt to preserve it. And then there's that one Bible verse in the New Testament that talks about where Yeshua cleaned the water with salt. Salt does not let bad bacteria grow. It's a very important item for us. Versus the table salt. The table salt has the fake iodine in it. Your body can't handle the fake iodine, so it doesn't use it. It says, even though it says it has more iodine in it than the sea salt, it doesn't matter, because your body doesn't use that fake iodine well, and because it's not coming with the other minerals your body needs in it, it's not doing you a bit of good. The natural sea salt that has just the littler bit of iodine in it has all the other things in it that Yahweh planned for you to eat all together, so that you can use all of those minerals together for your benefit. And it's the same way as an orange. You can get your vitamin C from an orange, let's say, and the orange will provide everything in it that Yahweh thought you should have in that orange together that will make your body use that vitamin C to its best. Whereas if you just take a vitamin C pill, if it doesn't have all the other things in it that Yahweh wanted you to have in it, you're probably missing what you need in order to really use that vitamin C as intended. It's the same with the salt. I mean, if you get it in a natural source, it is the way Yahweh intended it for our bodies, and we can heal from it and stay healthy from it. Now, water, that's really important. That's mentioned quite a bit in the Bible, too. Genesis 26:19, Leviticus 11:36, Proverbs 5:15, Song of Solomon 4:15, Jeremiah 6:7, Syriac 39:26 says it's necessary for human life, and John 4:10. Most of these verses talk about that they did dig a well to get their water, and they considered well water living water, meaning it was not dead water. It was living water that is good for humans to have. It wasn't killed, boiled, that kind of thing. It is good for pH balance, body temperature, metabolism, breathing, heats, burns, migraines, gastritis, ulcers, kidney stones, arthritis, backaches, kidney functioning, skin tone. We know you have to have water. Now, the Bible tells us that we're supposed to drink from our own cistern, our own well. That makes it really hard if you live in the city to drink from your own well. But basically, it's telling you that we should not be putting something as important as our water to another person's, under another person's control. It wants our water that we drink under our control. So I hardly find that drinking bottled water that I get from somebody else, or city water, that's not something under my control, that I have any control over whether I'm drinking clean water or not. The only way to know is to have a spring or have a well, and how you would do that living in the city, I don't know. You wouldn't be allowed in most places. Because we know the cities put fluoride in it, and they chlorinate it, and they do all kinds of things to it. And most of that water anyways comes from where they've gathered it from rainwater, and they just don't treat it properly like you should if you're going to do that. It is not good clean water. Good clean water is something that Yahweh provided for us, and it's spring and well water. Okay. Now, the Bible lists many foods, and I'm sure I didn't mention them all, but I do want to mention, though, that biblical foods that we eat that are clean are not the same as kosher laws. The kosher laws are completely different. The kosher laws do not agree with what the Bible says you can eat. Mostly kosher laws says that a bug should never have touched it. That's the main thing, whereas biblical produce says that it must regenerate new life. That is the definition of plant food, and that's what we feed our animals, and then we eat clean animals that ate the produce. Anyways, there are foods that are not mentioned in the Bible, though, and there's two reasons that I can think of why they're not mentioned. One is maybe they ate them, but they don't eat them enough that they ever mentioned it. Maybe it's just didn't get mentioned. And the other, better even probably, some things weren't mentioned in the Bible because they weren't native to their environment. If they didn't have a certain kind of thing because it grew in the tropics, they didn't eat it, so it didn't get mentioned in the Bible. Some of the foods not mentioned in the Bible are The vegetables are cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, tomatoes, peppers, carrots, potatoes, turnips, celery, spinach, peas, kale, collard greens, asparagus, and eggplant. Now, of these vegetables, what's interesting about it, I tried to search for every kind of root vegetable that I could think of, and I could not find one root vegetable that was mentioned in our Bible. The fruits not mentioned are peaches, nectarines, strawberries, pineapples, mangoes, kiwi, grapefruit, and oranges. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't eat it. I'm just making a note that these were not mentioned. I don't know of any reason you would not be able to eat them as long as they are able to produce new life. Again, that means, and the seeds can produce new life. That means they're food that Yahweh will bless your body with because they are healthy for you to eat. In conclusion, though, the food companies' goals are to make a profit from their shareholders. In order to make a profit, they put the cheapest ingredients in our food today. For example, mayonnaise used to be made of quality oil, and now it's made of cheap GMO soy oil that should not be eaten. The food corporations have changed many of their recipes in the same manner. For the most part, only 10 corporations produce the products purchased at the grocery store today. These corporations lobby our politicians to keep their unsafe food products on the market. It is important to them that you eat unhealthy food. Oh, it's so important to them that you eat unhealthy food that they've created a new psychiatric disorder called the healthy eating disorder. They coined up a new term for that. That was about a year ago or so. We as Israelites, though, we need to vote with our pocket. We must vote with our pocket and stop buying unclean food from the grocery store. Our goal must be to keep our earthly bodies healthy. Tell them you do not want their cheap food products by growing your own. Buy from a trusted source at a farmer's market, and buy only organic at the grocery store. By the way, buying organic is great for our environment since it keeps pesticides and herbicides out of our water sources. And of course, one of the most important things, always remember to ask Yahweh for a blessing to your meal and thank Him for the meal that we're providing. Well, I hope this is lesson you've enjoyed today, and thank you very much for listening. Yahweh bless.